Hi little skeletons, it is Disney Queen Skelly here. So as you can see by the title, we are actually starting a new series. I know I've read the Bounty Hunter's Guide to you guys, and I know we're still not done with it. I'm probably gonna delete what I have and then start over because doing that whole thing was a mess and I did not do it properly. We'll get back to that later. I have been watching a lot of BookTube recently. And if you guys don't know what BookTube is, it's the reading side of YouTube. So these people read a ton and they'll detail you books that they like, books that they don't like. They'll go into like some people will take an entire video just to explain one book. I don't have that kind of patience. So what I'm going to do, because I found inspiration in this and I decided to kind of do my own version of it and split it up into parts. And we're just going to do one part at a time, one chapter at a time, because that is how I like to do things. And again, with this new channel update that I have coming for you guys, you'll be able to see the parts a lot quicker than our usual schedule. So a little hint at what we're going to be doing in the future. With that being said, we are starting with a book that I was incredibly excited to read. I have actually already read a little bit of it. This is the beginning right here, so this is kind of like I'm almost at the halfway mark, and unfortunately I haven't liked it so far, which kind of bums me out because this is supposed to be a sequel to my favorite movie of all time. And I don't mean to talk shit on the author, but holy crap, I've been so disappointed. I don't know why people like this book. I'm gonna read it chapter by chapter with you guys and explain my thoughts each chapter as we go, because I just really need to put it out there why this book is disappointing me so far. And I'm hoping it's just the first half of this book. And I have a bad habit of taking off book covers because I just don't like them. So I do apologize if that upsets you. The book that we are going to be starting this series with is Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. This is the sequel, unofficial sequel to The Nightmare Before Christmas. Again, I am so sorry if you guys have actually been liking this book. I haven't been. And again, I'm not even halfway through this, so I'm hoping it's just me. I'm hoping it's just the start of it. I'm hoping that as I get further into this book, maybe it'll get better. But until then, you and I are going to walk through this book together, chapter by chapter, section by section. And once we hit the end, we are going to do our final thoughts on this. So let's get started and read together Chapter 1 of Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that this book is Sally's life after the movie. This is how she is living her life as the Pumpkin Queen. So that is what we're getting into. Let's start. Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. But first, we're going to read a quote. I sense there's something in the wind that feels like tragedies at hand. Sally, Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. Prologue. At the crisp, inky hour of midnight, Jack and I are married atop Spiral Hill in the Death's Door Cemetery. Wind stirs the bone-dry leaves, and Jack takes my soft ragdoll hands in his, the coolness of his fingers calming the flutter rippling across my stitched seams. The mayor stands broad-chested before us, officiating the ceremony, his face alternating between corkscrew-eyed elation and pale, ghastly tears, while we speak our vows to each other in the grim custom of ancient wedding eulogies. The moon is a bloody red in the sky, a good omen, and a wilted oleander flower plucked from a patch of poison ivy at the far end of Halloween Town is tucked just behind my left ear, a custom that ensures a long, dreadful life. I squeeze Jack's hand tighter. His black tuxedo tails sway in the cold night air, while my dress, stitched from a scrap of black spinster lace sewn myself the night before, billows like a ghost in the breeze. Cautiously, my gaze flicks to the crowd, where I can feel the cold, spiteful eyes of Dr. Finkelstein, watching me from the front row, mouth quivering with fury now that I am finally escaping him once and for all. I am no longer your creation, I think, words knitted in my chest. It seems unimaginable that barely a year ago I feared I might spend my life trapped in Dr. Finkelstein's lab, fated to only ever watch Jack from afar, loving him but certain he would never know the ache I felt whenever he looked my way. But after Jack tried to steal Christmas from Sandy Claus, after he nearly died venturing to the human world to deliver our grim presents on Christmas Eve, with Zero leading his sleigh of skeleton reindeer, a plan I sensed was doomed from the start. I knew I couldn't spend my life without him. I knew I wouldn't waste another night. Under a dark, snow-flecked sky, Jack and I walked out to the cemetery, his moon-hollow eyes sinking into mine. And at last, after a lifetime of loving him from afar, my ragdoll heart aching to know what it would feel like if he ever loved me back, we shared our first kiss on the crest of Spiral Hill, the same place where we now stand, hand in hand. The mayor's face spins back around to reveal his wide, toothy grin, his black widowed bow tie eerily shining in the moonlight, and he announces Jack and me as husband and wife, voice bellowing over the crowd. Jack leans forward, eyes damp at the edges, and presses his grave, cold mouth to mine, and my seams feel like they are going to fray and burst, like they can't contain his swollen, chest-widening feeling rupturing through me. A feeling so strange and unknown and peculiar that it makes me dizzy, makes my head swim, my legs teeter. Jack and I are married. He wipes away the tears streaming down my cotton cheekbone to my chin and looks at me like his own chest is about to fracture. And for a moment I'm certain they should just bury us both here, at the center of the graveyard, married and died on the same day, unable to contain the unspeakable, awful, wondrous emotion breaking against our eyelids. The dreadful residents of Halloween Town applauded, tossing tiny dwarf spiders at our feet as we leave the cemetery, and the warmth in my chest feels like bats clamoring for a way out of my rib cage, trying to break me apart. I am now Sally Skellington, the Pumpkin Queen, and I am certain I will never again be as happy as I am right now. Okay, so let's first talk about the prologue before we get into chapter 1. So I'd like to start out by saying that I will say I love the imagery that was given for their wedding, and how you can basically imagine Sally's dress and how she looks. You can imagine Jack in his outfit and how he looks and how much they love each other and the I do's and all that. The only issue I really have with the prologue is the really long ass sentence. I just realized this is one long ass sentence. So the moon is a bloody red in the sky, a good omen, and a wilted oleander flower plucked from a patch of poison ivy at the far end of Halloween Town is tucked just behind my left ear, a custom that ensures a long, dreadful life. Okay, I love the imagery of the flower. I don't even know what an oleander flower is. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Let's go ahead and look up what an oleander flower is. Oleander. Okay. Don't know if the author knew what an oleander flower is either. Did I spell that right? I did. Oh, it's a toxic plant. Well, that surely explains why they chose it. The oleander looks like this. It's very bright, very vibrant, not typically something you'd see in Halloween Town, given its very bright color, and it looks like it really only comes in like reds and maybe a very dull pink. So this would be the other color. It's a very dull pink from my end. I know for you guys, it looks a bit brighter. Again, not something that would be common in Halloween Town. If you watch the movie, there's not very many bright things other than maybe the characters and their color palettes. So if Sally does have an oleander flower in her hair, I feel like, one, it's kind of out of place, but two, if you were to see this in a movie, it would really make her stand out, which is really cool. So we love to see a character that stands out. But the line, to ensure a long and dreadful life. So she counters this later by saying that they should bury them now, living and dying on the same day or something like that. None of the characters in Halloween Town are alive, to my knowledge. So the fact that she's using a line, a long and dreadful life, really doesn't make sense. A better line would probably be like a long and dreadful marriage, or something kind of like that. It's just very hard to really connect with what she's saying, given that there is no life in Halloween Town. Everyone is dead. That's kind of just a nitpick, though. Again, I am probably just splitting hairs there when it comes to just what I prefer. But again, that is just me. Congratulations to Sally and Jack. They obviously deserve to be very happy together. Let's go on to Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The evening skyline of Halloween Town is dotted with tiny pinholes of starlight, and across the town square, pumpkins glow a sinister copper orange. From Jack's house atop Skull Hill, the town looks different, draped in long, finger-like shadows. The air smells different, too, like black licorice and raven wings, and a little like pumpkin jam. Nothing like the foul stench of sodium chloride and rubbing alcohol that permeates Dr. Finkelstein's lab, a place that was once my home, but also a prison. The memory of it churns inside me, entwined with a feeling of stark relief that I will never again sleep inside that cold observatory. Never lie awake alone in a narrow, moth-eaten bed, staring through a tiny window up at Jack's house in the distance, daydreaming of living with its walls someday. It feels like a fairy tale from one of those happily ever after books where the princess storms the castle, slays a goblin dragon, and takes over the kingdom for herself. Except I am not golden-haired or fine-boned. I have no bones at all. I am a rag doll who married a skeleton king. A rag doll who woke from the impossible daydream and found herself in her own heroine story, a tale whose ending hasn't yet been written, but instead is only just beginning. I leave the terrace overlooking the town and move back into the bedroom I now share with Jack. Facing the tall, spiderweb cracked mirror leaning against the slanted wall, I run my fingers through my hair, pulling it forward over my shoulder, the scarlet strands so coffin straight that they could never be coiled or coiffed or pinned up with bat bows. I press my palms against my patchwork dress, staring at my reflection in the glass. The crossed seams along my chest, the smile seams at the corners of my mouth, the places where Dr. Finkelstein stitched me together. Needle and thread and sinister midnight conjurings. His creation, made in the dark, damp shadows of his lab. A dead leaf pokes out from the seam along the side of my left elbow, my stuffing coming loose, and I quickly push it back into place. My threads need to be restitched, leaves gathered and restuffed. "You ready?" Jack asks. I turn, and he's standing in our bedroom doorway, holding a black velvet suitcase, the bottomless caverns of his eyes like graves I would happily tumble into, down, 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 forever without end. A spider, a remembrance of the wedding, skitters free from the inside of the suitcase and runs along the handle before it drops to the floor and falls into a crack. I had wanted to gather herbs from the garden, nightshade, and bottle thorns, to take with us just in case. But Jack assured me that I wouldn't need such things on our honeymoon. Potions and poisons aren't necessary outside of Halloween Town, he had said. There would be no need to poison or put anyone into a deathly sleep. But it's hard for me to imagine a world where such things aren't needed. I turn to smile at Jack, the seams on my cheeks stretching wide. I unplaced my hand around the sturdy bones of his arms. My husband, the man I have loved for so long, at times it felt like it might crack me open, and together we step out into the cool twilight of Halloween Town. At the front gate of our home, guarded by two iron cats, spines raised, Jack pushes open the gate to face the waiting crowd, eager to catch a glimpse of the newly married king and queen, and he clears his throat. "My wife Sally and I are off on our honeymoon," he announces, grinning, showing all of his corn kernel teeth. "We'll be back tomorrow. If anything should happen, the mayor will be in charge." The mayor, who stands beside one of the fanged metal cats, jerks his shoulders back. At the same moment, his face spins around, revealing the downturned slope of his crooked mouth and the deep worry in his small eyes. "Is that such a good idea, Jack?" he asks nervously. "Perhaps someone else should be in charge. Or maybe we should elect a committee. I'm not sure I can make decisions if an important matter were to arise. Or you could delay the honeymoon until after Halloween. It's only 2 weeks away," he reminds Jack. "Spring is a perfect time for a trip. Or better yet, just skip the honeymoon altogether." "You'll do great," Jack says, clapping the mayor on the shoulder. The mayor briefly reveals his smiling face, as if for a half a second he believes he's up for the task, before his features swivel back around, lips a grim blue, worrying rimming his terror-struck eyes. But Jack is unfazed by the mayor's apprehension. It's nothing new, and we make our way through the crowd, Jack shaking hands, accepting the congratulations of the townspeople, who shuffle close, too close, crushing against us, hands reaching out to see us off. But I slink back. The eyes of everyone on me feels like thorny stabs across my linen flesh, pulling me apart bit by bit. I'm not used to the attention, the whites of their eyes like hollowed-out ghosts peering into my empty soul, judging, appraising. Sally the rag doll, our pumpkin queen. There is a festering thought inside me. Perhaps they'll think I'm not worthy of the title. A rag doll should never be queen. A rag doll who should go back to the darkness of Dr. Finkelstein's lab, cold and solitary and alone. They look at me like they're considering eating me whole. Some of them probably would, but then I catch a flash of white to my left, and Zero appears, pushing through the onlookers to nudge me in the elbow with his glowing jack-o'-lantern nose, and I stroke his ghostly white coat, the soft, transparent feel of his fur, his sagging ears. The tightness of my chest calms, and he smiles his loose, open dog grin. To Zero, I am no different than I was yesterday before I married Jack, before I became queen. With Zero hovering at my side, I followed Jack through the town center, ducking through the last of the crowd just as Lock, Shock, and Barrel, also known woefully as Boogie's Boys, shout, "We'll miss you, Pumpkin Queen." They've never removed their trick-or-treat disguises, revealing their true faces, which are somewhat perplexing, identical to their masked facades, and they grin like the young children they are. Yet there is always a sly, crafty undertone hidden in their shimmering eyes that can't ever be trusted. This isn't their grins or their scheming giggles that send a chill down the uneven stitching of my spine, however. It is a name they call me, Pumpkin Queen. It's the first time I've heard it said aloud, and it rings in my ears all the way to the forest, to the hinterlands and the grove of 7 trees. "Are you sure it's safe?" I asked Jack, his face marred by shadows from the towering, spiny branches overhead. There was no wind on our walk through the woods, yet now the circle of trees shivers and vibrates, beckoning us closer. Jack taps a finger on the broad tree with a perfect heart, painted a buttery pink, carved at the center. We are standing in the circular grove of 7 trees that led to 7 holidays, where last year Jack slipped into Christmas Town and kidnapped Sandy Claus. I've never been outside Halloween Town, never ventured beyond its borders, and I spin around now, slightly breathless, marveling at each strange carved tree, each with its own peculiar doorway. A green 4-leafed clover adorns the tree for St. Patrick's Day. A red firework for the 4th of July. A giant turkey marks the entrance to Thanksgiving. A pale painted egg for Easter. A Christmas tree with tiny bulbs and lights leads to Christmas Town. And lastly, a grinning orange pumpkin for our home, Halloween Town. After a pause, Jack steps toward the painted heart doorway, a pink and white striped box set near the trunk of the tree. "Of course," he answers, and I can hear the excitement in his voice. He's been to all the holidays, all the towns, except this one. He's been saving this tree for me. I imagine Valentine's Town will be more wondrous than all the rest, and now we'll see it together. He kisses the back of my hand, eyes tumbling into mine. Then he tugs open the heart-shaped door nested in the trunk of the tree. A wind coils out from inside, soft and warm, smelling faintly of sugar cookies and wild roses. I've never smelled anything so wondrous. Still nervously, I spin the bone-white wedding band on my finger, my eyes tracing the deadly nightshade vines engraved along the outer edge, a plant that was meant freedom for me, a way to escape Dr. Finkelstein each time I poisoned him with nightshade from the garden. "You are free now," I reminded myself, because although there is a buzzing of curiosity in my chest, there are also nervous crow wings flapping in my stomach. But when I lift my gaze to Jack, his moonless eyes settle the restless crows, and the corners of my mouth tip upward. "I trust you," I say. "Because I do, more than anything." Jack nods, stepping his long, spidery legs through the opening into the tree and pulls me in after him. Okay, let's talk about Chapter 1. First of all, I'm going to bookmark for Chapter 2. Make sure that we know where we are. So I'm going to start with... I love the description of how the world looks. It's basically very reminiscent of how Halloween Town is. I'm also going to say this. I'm not an expert on The Nightmare Before Christmas. I've just done a lot of my own research. I've watched it a lot, and I've done my due diligence to know that what I'm saying isn't complete bullshit. We're just gonna put that out there. I'm glad that she's happy that she is no longer stuck at Dr. Finkelstein's house, because obviously when she was at the house, she was boarded up. She was never allowed out. I have always said that if Sally maybe just listened to Dr. Finkelstein, she wouldn't be in that situation. Because if you think about it, any kid who sneaks out of their parents' house is likely to get in trouble. And she went the extra mile to drug him with nightshade to sneak out. I don't know what her life was before The Nightmare Before Christmas, because immediately in the beginning he says, "The deadly nightshade you slipped me wore off, Sally." So obviously she has poisoned him before. She's gonna do it again. And she's obviously not gonna stop if she wanted to go out. So I'm only going based on what the movie has said. And what the movie has said is Sally just sneaks out for no reason. Maybe in the past Dr. Finkelstein never allowed her to go out of the house. So maybe that's why she poisons him. However, I have the issue that unless that was previously stated, which I don't ever recall it being stated, that he never let her out of the house, then I can understand why he would be upset about her poisoning him constantly so she could leave the house. I like how she describes the smell of black licorice and a little like pumpkin jam. But what do raven wings smell like? Because, I mean, unless you domesticate a raven, they're outside all the time, and you can obviously domesticate your raven and then still be outside, I guess. But what would raven wings smell like? Because my guess is they would just smell like dirty nothing. I don't know. Educate me in the comments. So she says that the memory of being in the house of Dr. Finkelstein obviously is still in the back of her head, which I can understand. She lived there for a very long time and felt trapped. So she's obviously very happy to get out of the house and to finally live her own life. She says that she feels like a princess, like a fairy tale, where the princess storms the castle, slays a goblin dragon, and takes over the kingdom for herself. So basically one of those, like, I'm the princess, I'm in charge of my own story, which is really cool. I like that, that she can feel like she's in charge of her own story and that she got out on her own. My question is, what the hell is a goblin dragon? That's pretty terrifying looking. So it seems like it's like a D&D type character or something, but that's a goblin dragon. That's pretty freaky. Good on her for feeling like she defeated one of those. That's probably like her inner demon. So she's happy in her home, and they're gonna go on their honeymoon to Valentine's Town, which is really cool. One thing I don't really like about this as well is the writing style. If you can hear, there's a lot of run-on sentences. And a lot of the time, you'll get things like this. If you notice in a lot of these paragraphs, there are these little lines where she kind of has a point, like she's talking, and then she kind of like trails off into something else. Like you can kind of see it here too. There's like all these little lines. There we go. So like a spider, a remembrance of the wedding. So like she has these lines, like these little dashes, literally all throughout the book. And it's really bad because it ends up making it like a really awkward run-on sentence, and it's very jarring to read. Like she has "and" in a lot of places too, where she could have just started a new sentence. That bothers me a lot, and I'm not saying I'm like a good writer. I have a lot of flaws too. I definitely have my own issues when it comes to writing, but reading things like this, like run-on sentences, and seeing how it's structured really bothers me, and the sound of reading it really bothers me. Also, I think I read a sentence wrong. They've removed their trick-or-treating disguises, revealing their true faces. I think I read that they didn't. That's my bad. That was for the sentence about Lock, Shock, and Barrel. However, I don't think we need the distinction that they're known as Boogie's Boys. I feel like a lot of people already know that, but I guess if people are reading this for the first time without watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, it would be, I guess, good to know because some people may have forgotten. But I feel like it's very out of character that they'd say, "We'll miss you, Pumpkin Queen." I understand that they love Jack a lot. Like, they make it very obvious towards the end that they're trying to help him. But at the same time, or at the end of the movie, that they're trying to help him. But at the same time, they're the ones who went behind Jack's back to tell Oogie Boogie about Santa. So I don't know how in character it would be for them to say, "We'll miss you, Pumpkin Queen." They could probably say like, "Bye, Pumpkin Queen," or something like that. It just doesn't seem right. Also, I'm going to check something because I don't quite remember there being a 4th of July tree. I could be wrong, but let's go ahead and check that real quick. It's not a firework. It's a firecracker. It's that thing right there. It's technically not a firework. It's a cracker, which makes sense. So yeah, there's Valentine's Town with the little, if you can see it, there's that little gift that she was talking about at the base of the tree. Easter, Thanksgiving, yeah. So it's not a firework, it's like a little light, it's a little firecracker, which is fine. That doesn't really, well, it's not like it doesn't matter because she described it as a red firework. I don't know where this chick is from. I don't know where Earnshaw is from. Maybe where she's from, it's described as a firework instead of like a firecracker. But I guess Yeah, you can kind of describe it that way. I was just thinking more like a kaboom firework, not so much like a little firework that you light. I don't know. I guess that, again, that's just my little nitpick. I'm so sorry if I am picking this book apart more than I should. I've just had a lot of issues with it. Just wait till we get to the other book that we're gonna read. That one's the book about the sequel to Hercules, and I have more issues there. Once we get into the Valentine Town, that's where I tend to have a lot of issues when we get into Valentine's Town, because a lot of the descriptions there and a lot of how I feel like the movie would have been done just doesn't, or the story would have been done doesn't seem right. And I'm so sorry again if this just seems like a bunch of criticism. I'm trying my best to show the good sides of this book too, so that way it's not me just totally bashing on Earnshaw for this book. I'm very sorry again if this upsets you, if this series is going to upset you, then please don't watch it. This is just going to be what I think throughout the entire story and how I perceive it, and it's so nitpicky, and I'm so sorry. This is just me, and this is how I would like to get that out. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will read chapter 2 next time, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, little skeletons. Stay safe, and I love you guys. And if you guys have gotten through this book and you do like it, let me know your opinions in the comment section down below, but please keep things polite. Keep things civil, because a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions, and if you didn't like the book, please let me also know why in the comment section down below. But again, be respectful, be kind, and listen to others' opinions. Don't just throw your own and say that it's the only one that's correct. So have a wonderful day, little skeletons.